Welcome to the Indie Author Showcase. I am your host, Chad Robert Morgan, now seven-time award-winning horror author. Sci-fi, not so much. I do actually have two series. I do horror and I do sci-fi comedy. The sci-fi comedy doesn't get any love. I swear to God, it doesn't. But my horror is killing it. I will humble brag there. Right? I've won 7 awards for my horror. And I'm getting some really good feedback when I go to these conventions. Sci-fi comedy, not so much. I got a friend of mine. This is actually a good question for you. So one of the great things about being an indie author is I get to write what I want to write, right? I'll write horror, and then I'm like, I got kind of a comedy vibe going. I kind of want to lighten things up, and I'll do my sci-fi comedy, and then I'll do another horror one, but it'll be more kid-friendly because I kind of want to have something for the younger readers or something like that. And I actually have ideas for other stories. My next horror story is going to be kind of a supernatural crime noir kind of thing, right? Which is going to fit in my horror universe. I also got an idea for kind of a lit RPG, kind of a little bit of a twist to it. Not the most original twist, but I kind of think I got a unique spin on the idea of NPC becoming sentient kind of thing. I know it's kind of been done before, but I got an idea of how it'd be cool. I just got to find time to actually sit and write. But the cool thing is being an indie author, I'm not dictated by the market, right? There was an interesting lecture, not lecture, but like a writer's coffee house is what it was up in Burbank. Sitting around, and Peter Clines was talking about one of the issues he has with working with a publisher, and he'll go, I have this great idea for a werewolf story. And they're like, can you make it vampires? Vampires are what's selling right now. No, it's a story about werewolves. That's my idea. It's not going to work with vampires. Can we come up with a vampire story, right? So there's pressure on the publishing side, on the traditional publishing side, I should say, because they want to make money, obviously. And, well, I mean, don't we all? But they're a business, and if they don't make money, the business dies, right? A lot of indie authors, this is a side hustle. They're doing it for fun. It's a vanity project. I myself have like a day job and a side hustle, and I'm writing. So I'm funding this indie author process. Other people are, they know how to do the hustle. They've done it for a long time. Todd Fonestock, for example, friend of the show, he left the traditional publishing world to be an indie author. So he's been mapping out what conventions work for him, what styles work for him, all that kind of stuff. So he's got that down pat. He's got what's working for him. But as an indie author, one of the great advantages I have is I do not have that pressure to write what the market says I should write. I don't have to follow trends. Now, that's not saying there's not a logic to following trends. Maybe you should. I don't know. That's another discussion. My point being is that I don't have a publisher saying, hey, I need your book to make money. You need to write about zombies, or you need to write about vampires, or have some sort of love triangle with a dog, a cat, and a fire hydrant. I don't know. Whatever the hell is selling those days. I don't have that, right? My pressures are different. My pressures are, if I don't sell a book, why am I still doing this, right? But I have the liberty of writing what I want to do. As an indie author, do you have that freedom, or are you more like, this is my mortgage payment. I have to sell books, or I don't eat. I don't have that freedom. I do have to chase the trends. Tell me what you think, right? That's where I'm coming from. But again, that's me. That's my perspective. What is yours? How do you feel? Leave a comment, whether it's on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you're getting this podcast. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. So real quick, today we are recording with a different microphone. Last week I was using these lapel mics. This is, I bring it up here real quick. This is the Zoplin USB lapel mic. That is ZOPPLM. And they have this little dongle that you can either plug into your phone, or I use a USB-C to USB-A adapter to plug it into my PC. And then each one of these lapels link into there. This is really, and it comes with this charging case. So this is a really handy little thing. And this cost me about $40, right? And this worked really well last time. The recording was very, very clean. Usually when I use my Samsung over here, I have to run everything through Isotope because it picks up everything, including the PC, which is very, very noisy. So I run it through Isotope to pull out the background noise, make it sound a little bit cleaner, make it sound like I'm more in a professional studio, even though I'm not, right? Last time I didn't have to do that with these because it had the noise filter built into it, and it came out so clean. This was really nice. So today, I'm not using it. Today, I am using this one. So this is from Glonhi. That's Glonhi. I swear to God, these people do not... Are they being charged by the valves? Is this Wheel of Fortune? Pros and cons of it. So why did I switch? Well, number one reason is I am working on a little something special for March, and a special interview, and there is going to be a third person in the interview. So this only has 2 lapel mics. This one has 3. So I am recording off of this lapel mic today. We'll see how well it comes out. The one thing I don't like about this system compared to the other one is it doesn't come with the charging case. It's very inexpensive. It's only $20. I would have liked the charging case just for no other reason than portability, but it's really nice to have it all charged in one place because every one of them has to have their own. But that's the only drawback so far. We'll see how well it records. And again, why do I had to go from 2 to 3? If everything works out properly, we will find out in March. All right. Setting up a little surprise for you there. One thing that happens kind of often is I will have people that have been on the podcast, have been featured on the podcast, come up to say, hey, well, if you like that book, you should check out the next one. Or here's the rest of the series, or I would love to come on again, or that kind of thing. As a general rule, and so far I haven't broken this rule, everybody's a one and done. Okay? One interview, one book showcased, and then I move on. And the reason I do that is because there's so many indie authors out there to be showcased that to double dip is to take away from somebody else's time in the spotlight. And again, this is not a judgment call. This is not because I don't like your book or anything like that. It's just I'm just, my TBR is so long. There's always another author out there that needs a little bit of love, right? Every book that I read is another book I'm not reading, right? I mean, I'm trying to get through one a week, and that in itself is a challenge with everything else going on in my life. I mean, as I've mentioned before, I got a day job. I got a side hustle. I'm doing this. I'm trying to write, the whole thing that started this in the first place. All kinds of family drama going on. I don't have the luxury of revisiting past authors, which is sometimes a real shame because some of them I have absolutely adored. I mean, there are some authors out there I was like, I read it, that's good, okay, put it aside, move on, that's fine. Maybe it's a really good book, but it's just not my flavor, right? Um, Jennifer Milne, for example, won our book of the year, has won multiple awards for her book. It's a really good book, but it's written for basically young girls. I'm not a young girl. I'm not the target audience. So would I read her next book? Probably not. Would I recommend it to a young girl who's around maybe 8 or 12? Definitely. I would definitely recommend it to somebody in that target audience. But I'm more of a horror fan, sci-fi fan, not little princess fan. So again, that's fine. It's about flavor. What I do, however, is anybody that has been showcased here on the podcast, I do announce when they have new stuff coming out. And if you have ever been on the showcase, and this is reaching out to any past interviewee or any past book that I have showcased here, or comic or graphic novel, if you got something new coming out, let me know. I will be more than happy to plug it. With that said, available for pre-order, Erin Louis's latest book, There's No Grave Like Home. Oh my God, I want to read this book. I do. I mean, again, I probably won't because I don't have time. But if there was an author I wanted to revisit, Erin Louis would be on top of the list. I kid you not. She won the award for best collection of short stories here on the podcast. I think she is a phenomenal writer. I think she's funny as hell. And if anybody was going to break me out of that no double dipping thing, it would be this book. It really truly would. This look, I mean, just talking to her about her South of Heaven book, I was like, oh, I want to read that. That sounds so good. But full blown on horror, There Is No Grave Like Home, is available for pre-order now. It comes out in May. Give Erin Louis's book a shot. And again, if you are a fellow showcase-e, is that a real word? I don't know. If you've been on the show before, you got a new book coming out, let me know. We will plug it. Because again, this is about lifting up indie authors. And I would love to have a section of the podcast that is just updates. Hey, this guy's got a new book. This guy's going to be at this convention. This guy's going to be here. I would love that. I would love to fill about a good 2-3 minute slot just in the beginning of the podcast of just updates like this. That would be great. And we'll start here with Erin. Again, Erin's book, available for pre-order. There's No Grave Like Home. Give it a look. Speaking of conventions, okay, first news. Creep IE is next week. In fact, it's not even next week. Technically, I'm late. This is Sunday. I was getting the podcast out on Friday. I gave myself an extra day, decided to do it Saturday morning. I didn't get it out Saturday morning. It is now Sunday. We'll get it out Sunday. Why the delay? I was finishing a book. But I wanted to get a podcast done so I can remind you all that in 5 days, this Friday of the time of this recording, Creep IE in Ontario. And again, normally they hand out promo codes and there's a competition with the vendors. For whatever reason, mine's MIA. I don't know where mine went. But if you want to support our friend of the show, Scott Harper, his promo code is Macabre. If you want to support the guys over at Diabolic, who won last convention's competition and is going to Creep IE for free this time, use their code Diabolic. Either one works. It'll get you a discount to your single day pass. If you can't support me, might as well support friends of the show. Use either one of those promo codes to get a discount to your single day pass, and you'll be helping out a fellow indie author. Other conventions. If you are a horror author and you are looking for a place to sell your book and get your name out there. I know that Hauntmare Expo is looking for vendors. Hauntmare Expo is in Fresno. I thought it was a good convention. I thought it was... The reason I'm not going back is twofold. One, again, I got a lot of personal drama going on. I'm trying to minimize my convention schedule because I'm terrified that I'm going to have to cancel a showing because of a family issue, right? So I'm trying to keep those to the minimum this year. I got enough going on. The second reason is I think it's a great convention for Fresno. And what I mean by that is if you're local to Fresno, it's a great convention. For somebody like us who's in South Orange County and has to drive 5 hours and get a hotel, I think it was teetering on whether or not it was big enough to be worth it. Last time, I think we broke even, maybe made a little bit of a profit. But that's a lot of work and a lot of time sink for breaking even or getting a little bit of profit. If it was bigger, if it was growing, and this is the third year they're doing it, so they are improving and getting bigger. I might be willing to try it again. I didn't think it was that bad of a convention. I thought it was. The Fresno Fairgrounds is absolutely lovely. So, but if you're local, definitely get on this one, right? This is great for if you're in the area at all. Again, if my time was more my own, I might reconsider. I might give it another shot. But like I said, I got so much personal stuff going on. I need to keep my schedule light. The same thing can be said for Halfway to Halloween. That will be an outdoor event over at Jurupa Park. I did not do so well at that one, but Josh Spiro, Matthew Johnson, they were selling like hotcakes. They did quite well. I was the outlier. I don't know why I wasn't getting the vibe going. But Matthew Johnson was selling like hotcakes. I think both him and Josh like sold twice as many books as I was selling. So it didn't work well for me. I don't know why. Again, would I reapply? Maybe. I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. I kind of would like to give it another shot. But like I said, I got a lot of personal drama going on right now, so I'm trying to keep my convention schedule lighter and just kind of focus on the big ones right now. So maybe next year, I don't know. I'll have to see. If you are not a horror writer, the Fall Fantasy Book Fair over at Griffith Park looks like they're going to start accepting vendor applications for March. Now, this event is in October. I think it would be lovely to do an event off of Griffith. I'm not applying to this one either, but that's primarily because I don't do fantasy. I wanted to check this out last year, and I didn't. I should go check it out this year if I have time. But definitely take a look at, because according to their Instagram post, right here, vendor applications are open in March. The event is in October. So take a look at that. And with that said, if you are a convention, if you are any one of these book fairs or anything of that nature, you want some indie authors as vendors, drop me a line. We'll plug it on the show. We'll say, hey, look, so-and-so is taking applications at this time. Let us know. Again, whatever helps fellow indie authors. Speaking of helping indie authors, one of the things I mentioned that I was going to work on this year, kind of a New Year's resolution, is I was going to take a crack at focusing on my marketing. I have written several books. I've won several awards. I've convinced at least a few people that I know what I'm doing when it comes to writing. Whether I do or not, that's another story. But I've convinced a handful of people. I have some people that think I know how to write. So we'll go on from there. Actually selling my book, I'm still learning. The one thing that I have learned about selling books was when my friend and coworker and cover artist Chris Williams over at Phantom Studios had a booth over at San Diego Comic-Con and said, hey, I wasn't going to use it this year. Would you like to take it for a day? And I took it for the entire convention. And my friend Michael Padrasis came out with his friend Ben, and Ben was a natural born salesman, and he was just selling those books. I mean, we sold almost 100 copies of across 3 different books. That's all I had at the time was 3, and we almost hit like 100 sales. And I learned kind of the hard way. If you're doing 100, you're doing good. Like I think I very rarely get that high. I'm more like about 50. But I basically shadowed him. I paid attention to what he was doing, and I kind of mentally took notes about his sale tactics. That's about all I know about selling books. Really was from that. So this year is going to be my exploration in the marketing. And as I mentioned in the podcast, I'm going to try a few different things. I am probably going to waste some money. I'm probably going to pay for services that are crap. I'm going to pay for services that are fantastic. I don't know which is which. We're going to have to try them and find out. And then I'm going to report back to you as to what works and what doesn't work. With that said, my first attempt here is Book Reverb. Now, Book Reverb, I'm actually enjoying this so far. What Book Reverb is, and I'll give you the pros and cons, is you upload your book in PDF form. You link it to your Amazon page, your book on Amazon, and then you give them some money. It's going to cost money. How much depends on you. You can spend as little as $6, or you can spend $6,000. Doesn't matter. What matters is what you can afford. And then you put a bid on what that book is worth. Then what happens is these readers are going to come on, they're going to see it and say, hey, for $6, I can read this book over here. And they will read it, and then they will leave a review. And now this is a honest review, and this is kind of a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, you don't have control. There's no guarantee that you're going to get a 5-star review, right? If it was, this wouldn't be legit, and Amazon would shut you down, right? So they could read your book. They could say, oh, this is crap, and leave a 1-star review. That's a risk, okay? That's a risk of anybody reviewing your book. I will say there's probably a little bit of a financial incentive for them to leave a positive review, because if they're not, you're not going to pay for the service anymore. But you don't have a guarantee. There's nothing in writing that says that they're going to give a 5-star review. Nothing like that. If they give you a 1-star, they're giving you a 1-star. You got no control. Okay? Which, again, double-edged sword. On the one hand, you don't know what you're going to get. On the other hand, you know it's going to be legit. This is not just a rubber stamp kind of thing to bloat your numbers artificially. So I think this is a good service. Now, here's the cons. First of all, it's a little expensive. Now, I've seen other services that are actually more expensive. But what happens is you put a bid for your book. For example, I put all of my books on there. Fear already has 2 or 3 more reviews than it did before I started this. 2 people are reading The Last Ride. A person or 2 is reading Short Bites. I have about somewhere around 6 or 8 people reading my books. No one is reading my Intergalactic Space Force books or The Baby Eater, which I thought was a little strange, because The Baby Eater is the most award-winning and previously was one of my bigger sellers. Nobody's touching that one. I don't know why. Now, if I want to encourage them to read these other books, I can increase the bid. I say, hey, if you don't want to read this for $6, how about you read it for $8? And I can crank that up. But as you can imagine, this is going to get expensive fast. If I want 1,000 reviews through this service for a single book, that's $6,000. And remember, that is the minimum bid. So it is pricey. Second problem I have with the service, because they are getting your PDF, they are not buying the book, so they are not a verified reviewer, right? Which is basically Amazon's way of saying this person didn't actually buy it from us, so we don't know where this review is coming from. Which is fair, because they don't in this particular case. Now, is it legit? Yes, it's a legit review, but Amazon doesn't know that. The third problem I have with this is that it is going to your Amazon page. Since it's not a verified review, I would love it if they could, if the service could paste that review on like Goodreads, Barnes and Noble, do it on multiple sites, not just on the Amazon site. I am, of course, nitpicking a little bit on that last one because Amazon is the biggest bookseller. Those reviews are going to feed the algorithm. That's sort of the most important place for the review to go. But I would love it if the reviews could go everywhere. I think that would be great. I know, it's great if you get traction on Amazon, but then if your Barnes and Noble thing is floundering, would it cost them that much extra to have it post in 3 different places at once or 4 different places? I don't know. That's just me. But those are the pros and cons. Now, if you want to try this out, use referral code. Now, if you want to try this out, use referral code Spectral, as in Spectral Inc. Productions, i.e., parent company of the podcast, SPECTRAL, and get a little bit of a discount. Give it a shot. It also means that if you are wanting to get paid to read, now again, I don't think you're going to be a millionaire. $6 per book. I mean, unless you are, just speed reading and going through 6 books an hour, you're probably not going to get rich off this thing. But if you're somebody who likes to read anyway, and you want to try new authors and maybe make a little bit of scratch on the side, check out Book Reverb. Give that a shot. When I was taking a course at the local community college for screenplay writing, one of the great things that I learned from there wasn't screenplay writing, although I learned that, but was how to give a review. And it's something that I've kind of fallen out of the habit of, and I want to get back into it when I start talking about these books that I'm showcasing, which again are not reviews. I'm not trying to tell you if it's on the showcase, it is a good book. You already have a good review. But my point being is one of the things that the teacher taught us is that when you are giving feedback, start with what you like. That disarms the listener. Feels like you're not ganging up on them, that kind of thing. And then it makes them more open to hearing the negative criticisms, right? On top of that, if you're looking to fix up your book or your screenplay or whatever, it's one thing to sit there and say, okay, here's all the stuff that's wrong. It's also good to know what is right. And I don't mean just from a morale boost, but also because if you're going to go through and start editing things, you don't want to cut the parts that actually were working. Those you want to leave alone. So with that said, I'm going to try to get back in that habit of doing these showcases, starting with what I like before I start going into the negatives. And again, the negatives are basically just my personal, what I liked, what I didn't like about it. It's to inform you, the viewer, of what to expect when you buy this book. Remember, nothing makes the showcase if it doesn't hit a certain quality bar to start with. So these are all good books that are on this showcase. I just want you to know that, this book might be about witches, or this book might be about princesses, or this book might be about romance. And you need to pick what best fits your style. And that's really the only point I'm trying to get at when I do these showcases and I start talking about what works and what doesn't work for me, is to inform you, the reader. It's not to sit there and say, well, this is what costed a star. No, they're all 5-star reviews on the podcast, every single one. In fact, I got to get off my butt and actually start writing up these 5-star reviews, because I got about a backlog, about 4 or 5 books I got to start leaving reviews on Amazon and Goodreads. But that's another problem. With all that said, let's go on to this week's showcase, which is The Witch of Blackwood Hollow by B. Humphrey. Found this book as a fellow audiobook reviewer Book of the Year winner for horror. What I found interesting let's start with the positives. This was a very crisp, clean book. What I mean by that is there wasn't a lot of chaffa. I should get back to the chaffa, actually. Let me time out on that. Somebody left a comment that says chaffa basically means garbage. And I looked into it. Turned out chaffa is actually a Spanish, I think it's a Spanish slang word. But it can also mean useless. And where I got the word from was from this thing that Kevin Smith was doing, the stand-up, where he was talking about directing Bruce Willis on Cop Out, and Bruce Willis would take the script and start ripping pages out and going, chaffa, chaffa, chaffa. And he was like, boss, what's chaffa? It's like, it doesn't move the story. It's extra fluff. It's chaffa, right? So that's how I've been using the word, but technically the word means it's garbage, or it's useless, or it's meaningless. Which is kind of how Bruce Willis was using it in that story. He was saying, hey, this is basically not worth anything. It's worthless. It's chaffa, right? In using it in the context of writing, chaffa is extra bits that don't move the story forward. They're stuff that if you pulled it out, nobody would really notice, right? It doesn't need to be there. It's just taking up space. This book was pretty much chaffa free. There's a couple of places where I kind of felt like it was going into a thing. Luckily, those times were really, really short, and we moved on, right? So this is crisp, clean, very plot-driven book. And I also like that it was really short and to the point, because as somebody who's trying to read one of these things every week, we got through this thing rather quickly. That was a huge help. So let me give you the blurb real quick. Eleanor Frost never knew her aunt, but she inherited everything. A decaying Victorian manor deep in the woods, along with the weight of its secrets. The house looms like a wound against the sky, filled with whispers that crawl through the walls and shadows that seem too aware. What slumbers within is not finished with the living, and Eleanor is about to awaken something that should have stayed buried. The roots of this house run deep, tangled with rituals and curses, blood and bone. The more Eleanor settles in, the more the house settles into her. Its presence heavy, its intent unclear, its hunger undeniable. In Blackwood Hollow, nothing stays dead for long. The past waits patiently in every corner, and what was invited in will never leave willingly. Some inheritances come with a price. This one demands your soul. Ooh. So, this is a good old-fashioned haunted house story. I really dug the premise. I really dug the action when you're actually dealing with the aforementioned Witch of Blackwood Hollow. Those scenes are very, very visceral. That's when it was good. Let me talk about the negatives real quick. When I was listening to this in the beginning, about maybe a third of the way through, I was thinking about putting this on the do not finish list. I'm glad I stuck with it because it did get better by the second end. And by the time you started getting near the end, I was getting way more interested in the actual fighting against the witch part and everything like that. Where I think it suffers is in character development. The characters, the ones that weren't two-dimensional, felt like they took way too long to become real characters. I did feel like the author was basically dropping off a bunch of red shirts to get killed. Now, I've talked about this in the past. I've done this in my own books as well. Like I've done this with Fear, where I introduced other characters, basically because I needed body counts, right? It's not much of a horror movie if nobody's at risk of being killed. That's not to say that you have to have a high body count. Look at The Shining. How many people actually died in the book The Shining? One, right? Jack Torrance is the only person in the book from the start of the book that actually died, right? Now, of course, a lot of people died like 50 years previously, and they're haunting the place, that kind of thing. But from the events of the book, when it actually starts, where the Torrance family moves into the hotel, to the point where Danny and his mother and Dick Halloran run from the hotel, one person dies, and that was the dad. That was it. In the movie, Dick Halloran dies. In the movie, two people died. But in the book, only Jack died. Only Jack Torrance died. So you don't need a huge body count to have a really good, scary book. But if you do want a body count and you're throwing in red shirts, you gotta not make them red shirts. You know what I mean? You have to spend some time building up this character so we feel for them. And like one of the red shirts I actually cared the most about was the delivery driver. Right? There's a delivery driver. He shows up for one chapter and he's brutally murdered. And as little character development as he got, I was still more sympathetic and interested in him because he's talking about how he's trying to support his family. And then the witch starts mimicking his mother, and how that kind of tugs on his heartstrings and everything like that. That one, as little as that was, that felt more real, right? Earlier in the book, one of the main characters, he's a contractor. He brings his crew, and he literally goes, "Oh, this is the cheerful one. This is the one that brings the coffee. This is the surly one over here." And very quickly, they get scared off and they don't want to come back. Which is, again, okay, fine. But in my humble opinion, if you want to bring these, you got, again, show, don't tell. Don't tell me that this is the cheerful one. Show me that's the cheerful one by their actions. There was a point where the contractor and Eleanor are talking, and the contractor is basically saying, "Look, we're stuck together." Right? She's saying she can't leave. She's got nowhere to go. She's got to deal with this thing because she's got no other house. She's got no other money. She's got no other family. It's this or she's on the street, basically. And the contractor says, "Look, I'm here with you." And she's like, "Well, why are you sticking around?" He's like, "Well, my business was about ready to go under until I got this job. Now my crew won't show up. I either finish this job or I declare bankruptcy and fold up." Which, again, if you have a homicidal witch that's trying to kill you with a demon dog, is that enough motivation? I don't know, but it's something. We'll go with it. Point being, I think that would have been way more interesting if we had a scene early on where he's trying to pay the bills, right? And it's showing how he's trying to, maybe one of his coworkers said, "Hey, boss, I really need a raise." And he's like, "Where the hell am I supposed to get money for a raise? I can't, And you get another person going like, hey, this bill is past due and everything like that. And we show how stressed he is trying to take care of his crew, trying to keep his business up, can't even afford to pay his own bills. And and then like this job lands on it. That would have built up his character way before this kind of like middle act dialogue where he and I mean you could have kept that, right? I mean, it was a few lines of dialogue, but imagine how much stronger that would hit if we had that scene before where we're showing his desperation. And that helps to make that motivation feel more real. And it helps to make him more real. Like there's a point where she makes a couple more friends and like, oh hey, that contractor, oh yeah, keep him. He's one of the good ones. He's another. Why is he one of the good ones? Show me. Right? I mean, there's a couple of things he does that's nice for Eleanor, but I mean, show me he's one of the good ones, right? Have an incident where somebody is maybe some kids are getting bullied and he steps in and helps them out, right? Especially if the person he's stepping in against is like the son of one of his debtors, right? Like he's like, you're being pretty cocky if because you owe me $2,000. It's like, hey, right is right, right? Your son was being a jerk. I don't care how much money. That would have been way more interesting, right? Because these little sample scenes, there was a point halfway through where we actually see that. Eleanor goes to this like town fair event kind of thing. This drunk guy hits on her, and these two girls come up and totally run defense and cock block the guy. And that little scene was way more character development for those two side characters, or those two minor characters, than any of those contractor laborers got. So I think it's really an interesting contrast, because one of the other winners that we reviewed was Dead Friends. And Dead Friends was completely the opposite. Dead Friends had very visceral, real characters that you could sink your teeth into. The plot got kind of messy. They kept introducing other elements that didn't quite line up with the rest of the story. And then at the end, you're like, okay, now we got vampires and werewolves in the thing? I thought this was like some sort of like Cthulhu thing going on here. Like, we had this whole subplot with the old woman, the old voodoo woman that he tacks on the epilogue that doesn't quite fit with the rest of the story. The plot was very rough and kind of branched out in other places that I'm not quite sure actually landed. But the characters were so real, and there's so much meat to those characters that you felt invested in wanting to know what happened to them. The Witch of Blackwood Hollow is sort of the opposite. The plot is very crisp and clean, very, very no nonsense, no chaffa. But you struggle to connect to the characters in the story. And about halfway through, I was starting to connect a little bit with Eleanor, and they introduced this other interesting character, Eloise. And again, why do you have an Eleanor and an Eloise? Dead Friends did the same thing. They had an Elizabeth and a Lizzie. Can we not come up with more creative names that are not bouncing off of other interesting names that are already in the book? I mean, come on. But Eloise was sort of like this, the Tangia of the thing. If you remember Poltergeist, this house is clean, right? She's going to come in and deal with this witch, and she's telling them what to do and everything like that. And the minute she shows up, the story got way more interesting. And primarily because she was a way more interesting character than what we had before. And it wasn't because she was so fleshed out or because there was more depth to her, but she was so eccentric And just, like, oh, child, you stepped in it good this time. Oh, child, you do not know what you're dealing with. And, oh, you've got a tangled web that you've got to get yourself unraveled in, child, that kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, this is a cool character. I'm digging this. Unfortunately, we had to get through half the book till we got there. But once we got to that second half of the book, it starts picking up. And I'm glad I stuck with it. So give this book a shot. Understand that, at least in my humble opinion, it did drag a bit in the beginning, but if you stick with it, it will pay off in the end. This is a good book. You just got to give it a little bit of chance to get rolling. Once you do, you're good. Okay, so that's a lot for this podcast. I try to keep these things at 30. We're going at almost an hour here. I've had a lot to say this time around. There's other topics I didn't even get a chance to getting around to. Sorry about that. Remember, there's no podcast next week because I will be at Creep IE. Please come see me. Get yourself an autographed copy of one of my books, including the brand new award-winning Fear. And until then, keep on reading.